On January 17, 2023, a 40-year-old Russian national checked into a hotel in Miami. To the hotel staff, he looked like any ordinary tech executive taking a quiet break in South Florida. His name was Anatoly Legkodymov, but across underground dark web forums, encrypted messaging rooms, and illicit financial channels, he was known simply as Roch, or sometimes Gandalf, the secretive mastermind behind one of the most prolific financial shadow networks in internet history. For 7 long years, Legkodymov ran BitSlotto, a cryptocurrency exchange built on one simple, extraordinarily dangerous business promise: absolute, unyielding anonymity. No government-issued photo IDs, no video verification selfies, no proof of residential address. To everyday, casual users, it looked like nothing more than a convenient, user-friendly peer-to-peer trading hub. But to international ransomware cartels, Darknet market vendors, stolen identity brokers, and state-backed cyber units, BitSlotto served as the primary financial washing machine for more than $4.5 billion in total volume. Legkodymov managed the day-to-day operations of the platform primarily out of Shenzhen, China, firmly believing that living in East Asia and running a Hong Kong-registered corporate shell company completely shielded him from Western law enforcement subpoenas. He moved through major international business hubs with absolute confidence, convinced that his multi-layered offshore structure kept him invulnerable. When he boarded his flight to Florida, he assumed U.S. authorities didn't even know who Roch was, let alone that Roch was sitting right in seat 12A. What he didn't know was that thousands of miles away, inside quiet, temperature-controlled European data centers, an elite international cyber task force had already breached his physical server infrastructure. Federal agents and foreign intelligence units weren't just watching BitSlotto from the outside using public blockchain ledger tools. They were sitting completely silently inside its internal database, reading its hidden ledger in real time. When law enforcement officers knocked firmly on his hotel room that night, it triggered a global, multi-jurisdictional chain reaction that severed the primary financial artery of the Russian-speaking cybercrime underworld overnight. But to understand how a simple trading platform grew into a multi-billion-dollar shadow bank and why it ultimately required an international alliance of 5 nations to bring it down, you have to look at the lethal structural flaw hidden deep inside its core code. To understand how BitSlotto grew into a multi-billion-dollar juggernaut, you have to go back to its origins in 2016. It didn't start as a polished corporate exchange with hundreds of compliance employees and slick television marketing campaigns. It began as BTC ChangeBot, a basic, lightweight peer-to-peer trading bot integrated directly into the encrypted messaging app Telegram. While major regulated global exchanges like Coinbase, Bitstamp, or Binance were beginning to enforce strict know-your-customer identity verification rules under heavy pressure from Western financial regulators, BitSlotto deliberately chose the exact opposite market path. Their marketing materials openly and explicitly boasted that users could buy, sell, and transfer digital assets without ever submitting passports, driver's licenses, or financial statements. In a global financial landscape where moving capital across international borders was becoming increasingly monitored, audited, and restricted, BTC ChangeBot offered an entirely friction-free gateway. Anyone with a basic smartphone and an active Telegram account could swap physical cash for Bitcoin in a matter of seconds. What started as a niche underground tool for privacy enthusiasts quickly evolved into an indispensable utility for users operating completely outside the legal financial system. By skipping basic legal compliance checks entirely, BitSlotto unlocked exponential viral user growth. Users didn't even need to download an application from official app stores or fill out complex registration web forms. They simply texted a Telegram bot basic text commands like buy BTC or send funds. The user interface was ultra simple, lightning fast, and entirely invisible to traditional banking monitors. Within months, millions of dollars in completely unvetted transactions were flowing through Telegram chat threads on a daily basis, laying the quiet foundation for what would eventually become a multi-billion-dollar financial illicit pipeline. Behind the scenes, BitSlotto's technical architecture was carefully engineered to keep transactions completely hidden from public sight and law enforcement scrutiny. When two users traded crypto on BitSlotto, the tokens didn't actually move on public transparent blockchains like Bitcoin or Ethereum. Instead, all transactions were recorded internally on a centralized proprietary off-chain database using private custodial wallets managed directly by BitSlotto. Millions of dollars could change hands dozens or even hundreds of times a day between accounts. Yet, to outside blockchain analysts and federal investigators, the public ledger registered virtually zero transaction activity. This off-chain ledger system created an impenetrable black box where illicit wealth could be shuffled, split, and consolidated silently between criminal networks without ever triggering automated blockchain tracking tools. Even when international regulatory pressure eventually forced BitSlotto to implement a basic registration web interface, company leadership made sure it was trivially easy to bypass. Bad actors routinely bought bulk packages of stolen identity data on dark web forums or submitted poorly forged profile documents, and BitSlotto's automated systems approved them without a second look. The platform wasn't just missing standard anti-money laundering safeguards, it was architected from the ground up as a safe haven from global financial oversight. Legkodymov and his core engineering team intentionally built the exchange to function as a financial vault that sat entirely outside the reach of subpoena requests, police inquiries, and formal court orders. Legkodymov genuinely believed this off-chain architecture made his platform invisible to Western authorities. He had no idea that French intelligence officers would eventually gain physical access to his hardware, installing a silent mirror inside his servers, a technical breach that was about to expose BitSlotto's most lucrative and dangerous criminal partnerships. BitSlotto did not exist in a vacuum. It was a core operational node in a dense, interconnected network of high-risk Russian crypto entities operating out of a very specific physical location, Federation Tower in Moscow. Inside this glittering twin-tower skyscraper in Moscow's financial district sat a dense cluster of over-the-counter crypto brokers, high-risk exchanges, and shadow clearinghouses, including notorious platforms like Garantex, Suex, and ChatX. These entities formed an interconnected underground network where stolen digital assets, ransomware payments, and proceeds from cyber scams could be swapped for physical cash or transferred seamlessly across international borders. Federation Tower functioned as the capital of global crypto laundering. If a platform like Garantex faced sanctions or banking restrictions, funds were routed through BitSlotto's Telegram bots. If a ransomware syndicate needed to convert tens of millions of dollars in Bitcoin into physical Russian rubles, BitSlotto's peer-to-peer liquidity network absorbed the volume without asking questions. This shadow financial ecosystem operated with tacit approval from local authorities, provided that the cybercrime and extortion were directed strictly outward toward Western targets. BitSlotto provided the essential financial plumbing that connected Moscow's underground markets to the global financial system, allowing illicit capital to move freely across continents without ever touching a regulated bank. By 2018, BitSlotto caught the attention of the largest, most sophisticated dark web marketplace in human history, Hydra Market. Operating across Eastern Europe and Russia, Hydra was a massive criminal ecosystem generating over $1.3 billion annually, selling illicit commodities, hacking tools, stolen data, and forged documentation. Hydra and BitSlotto formed an unspoken, deeply lucrative partnership that brought digital cybercrime straight to physical city streets. On Hydra, transactions relied on a unique delivery system known as zakladki, or dead drops. Buyers didn't receive packages in the mail where postal inspectors could intercept them. Instead, sellers hid items under park benches, behind loose bricks, inside magnetic containers attached to drain pipes, or buried in forest soil across cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg, or Kyiv. Once paid, the seller transmitted precise GPS coordinates and photos to the buyer. BitSlotto was the financial engine that made these real-world street deals instant and seamless. A buyer standing in a public park could open Bitslotto's Telegram bot directly on their phone, swap cash for crypto off-chain without identity verification, and pay the Hydra vendor for the GPS coordinates in under 60 seconds. Darknet vendors could then route their proceeds directly into Bitslotto custodial wallets, exchange the crypto for local fiat currency through peer-to-peer traders on the platform, and deposit the funds straight into commercial bank accounts within minutes. Blockchain intelligence firm Chainalysis later traced over $700 million in direct, uninterrupted cryptocurrency transactions flowing directly between Hydra and Bitslotto alone. Bitslotto wasn't just facilitating online trades, it was powering a real-world shadow economy across entire nations. As Bitslotto's infrastructure grew, its customer base expanded far beyond dark web merchants. It quickly became the preferred financial utility for some of the world's most destructive cybercriminal organizations and ransomware-as-a-service cartels. Among its most prominent clients was Conti, the notorious Kremlin-aligned ransomware-as-a-service cartel. When Conti crippled hospital networks, city infrastructure, school districts, and major corporations across the United States and Europe, millions of dollars in extortion payments were routed directly into Bitslotto's custodial wallets to be split, washed, and distributed to core developers and affiliates. Other major ransomware groups, including Phobos, Astrolocker, and Dharma, routinely used Bitslotto as their primary cash-out clearinghouse. Blockchain analytics uncovered an even darker connection. Bitslotto was being used actively to fund armed conflict and military aggression. Forensic tracking revealed cryptocurrency flows moving through Bitslotto directly to organizations like Project Terricon, a pro-Russian paramilitary network soliciting public crypto donations to buy weapons, body armor, drone equipment, and military gear from militia units operating in conflict zones. Bitslotto was no longer just an anonymous trading bot for internet users. It had evolved into a critical infrastructure component for global cyber extortion, organized crime, and geopolitical shadow funding. In public statements and legal filings, Bitslotto leadership consistently presented the company as a neutral, law-abiding software provider. They insisted they cooperated with international law enforcement requests and aggressively blocked bad actors whenever suspicious activity was detected on their systems. However, court documents later unsealed by federal prosecutors in New York revealed a trove of internal chat logs, emails, and executive memos that completely shattered Bitslotto's public defense. In May 2019, Legkodymov sent an internal message to a senior colleague explicitly acknowledging that Bitslotto's primary user base consisted of known bad actors operating under assumed identities to cover their tracks. He noted internally that the exchange's high transaction volume was driven almost entirely by users who could not pass compliance checks anywhere else. In other internal communications, Bitslotto employees directly warned Legkodymov that the platform was completely overrun with illegal funds originating from Hydra vendors and ransomware operators. Rather than freezing these accounts or implementing standard compliance safeguards, company executives drafted internal strategy notes arguing that Bitslotto should only fight illicit activity nominally. They explicitly warned each other that taking genuine compliance action against criminal accounts would destroy the company's bottom-line profitability. One internal summary document captured their business philosophy in stark, blunt terms. Positives, no KYC. Negatives, dirty money. Management knew exactly who was using the exchange, where the money was coming from, and why it was there. When internal engineers repeatedly warned Legkodymov that they were washing money for major international criminal cartels, his deliberate choice to ignore those warnings was logged forever on company servers, providing federal prosecutors with undeniable proof of criminal intent. For years, Bitslotto operated with apparent impunity. But in April 2022, German and U.S. authorities dealt a massive blow to the cybercrime ecosystem by seizing Hydra's physical servers in Germany. The dark web market collapsed overnight, but the financial washing machine that powered it remained fully operational. International task forces turned their full focus directly toward BitsLotto. In a coordinated international operation codenamed Operation High-Tech Access, French authorities, Europol, the FBI, and police units across Spain, Cyprus, and Portugal zeroed in on BitsLotto's core operational infrastructure. Investigators discovered that despite marketing itself as an offshore entity, BitsLotto's primary physical data centers were actually hosted in France. Because the physical servers were located on European soil, French law enforcement obtained judicial warrants to enter the data centers and secretly create real-time mirrors of BitsLotto's internal database. For months, investigators sat quietly inside the system, mapping wallet connections, identifying key administrators, and logging millions of transactions. Simultaneously, the U.S. Department of the Treasury deployed a rarely seen financial weapon. Under Section 9714 of the Combating Russian Money Laundering Act, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, officially designated BitsLotto as a primary money laundering concern. This marked the first time this specific regulatory authority was ever used in history. The designation prohibited any covered financial institution anywhere in the world from processing transactions involving BitsLotto or handling its funds, effectively cutting BitsLotto off from the global financial system overnight. Unaware that FinCEN had dropped a financial nuclear bomb on his exchange and that the FBI was tracking his passport in real time, Legkodymov boarded his flight to Miami in January 2023. On the night of January 17, 2023, law enforcement launched a synchronized global strike. In Florida, FBI agents arrested Legkodymov in his hotel room. At the exact same moment, French police seized BitsLotto's servers in Europe, taking the platform offline and replacing its website with an official law enforcement seizure banner. Simultaneous raids were executed across Cyprus, Spain, and Portugal, resulting in server seizures, millions in frozen assets, and the arrests of key technical personnel. If you enjoy these deep dives into digital forensics and cybercrime investigations, take a second to hit the subscribe button and drop a comment below on what case we should cover next. Following his arrest in Miami, Legkodymov was extradited to New York and brought before a federal court in Brooklyn. Facing overwhelming digital evidence, including the mirrored server data and his own internal chat logs, Legkodymov pleaded guilty in December 2023 to operating an unlicensed money-transmitting business. As part of his plea agreement, he agreed to forfeit $23 million in seized cryptocurrency assets and permanently dissolve BitsLotto. In July 2024, U.S. District Judge Eric Vitaliano sentenced Legkodymov to time served, accounting for the 18 months he had spent in custody at the Brooklyn Metropolitan Detention Facility. During the sentencing hearing, the judge specifically noted the notoriously harsh and punitive conditions at the Brooklyn Detention Facility as a key factor in his decision not to hand down additional prison time. However, Legkodymov's release from American custody did not mean his legal nightmare was over. The moment he walked out of the U.S. federal court system, French authorities formally submitted an extradition request to bring Legkodymov to France to face separate criminal charges for hosting BitsLotto's operational servers on European soil and facilitating money laundering under French law. Federal courts in the United States processed the French extradition request, keeping him tied to international legal proceedings. Meanwhile, in Moscow, BitsLotto's co-founder, Anton Shirenko, went live on YouTube, claiming that BitsLotto's remaining team would rebuild its server infrastructure in Russia and return user balances. Shortly after, Interpol issued a red notice, leading to his brief detention by Russian authorities in Moscow. Though released after signing a formal appearance pledge due to Russian non-extradition laws, BitsLotto's operational leadership remained permanently fractured and isolated from the global financial system. The fall of Bitslotto marked a fundamental evolution in global digital law enforcement. It proved that taking down individual cybercriminals is only half the battle. To truly paralyze international cybercrime ecosystems, law enforcement must systematically dismantle the financial infrastructure that makes digital crime profitable in the first place. Bitslotto marketed itself as an untraceable, impenetrable vault for the digital underworld. But when private databases meet coordinated international forensic task forces, even the most secretive shadow banks eventually run out of places to hide.